Okay, that was Supervisor Kirshner's line, I think, so he's trying to get in. All right, folks, we really appreciate everybody being with us today. This is, we in a normal non-pandemic, year, try to periodically celebrate, conservation successes, meet landowners and, folks around Northern Virginia who, have conserved with us and helped try to tell their stories, because each of them are very unique and, really a part of what we're all, hopefully here to do, which is to, protect and conserve Northern Virginia as we know it and love it. My name is Alan Rousum. I'm Executive Director of the Northern Virginia Conservation Trust. We are located in Annandale, Virginia, in Fairfax County. But as many of you all are as well, we have been remote for most of the last year. And so our staff, like everyone else, I think has made arrangements and done everything they needed to do to, handle these, sort of uncharted times. We have been in business since 1994, protecting, land parcels throughout Northern Virginia. And we started as the Fairfax Community Land Trust, protecting land in Great Falls and around Fairfax County. But over the past 15 or 20 years have really expanded to do work in Loudoun County, Prince William, Stafford, and now down even into Spotsylvania and Fauquier County, as there's been need and opportunity. We are excited to be here today to talk to you a little bit more about, one of our most recent conservation successes, along with the Wish and Abraham family in Loudoun County. It's a place that we have been working in a much more focused way in over the last 3, 4, 5 years. And we certainly do work alongside a number of other land trusts in Loudoun County that we are close with and that we have, good relationships with. And I think that's a hallmark of what we all do, is we're really all on the same team together. So NVCT has 8 staff members, and over the course of the last 26, 27 years, we have protected 119 properties with conservation easements throughout Northern Virginia, and now own 21 small fee nature preserves that have either been donated to us or that we've purchased. And so we're always looking for more opportunities to conserve new land. And I think what you're going to hear today is really an example of a special partnership and a collaboration that took some time, and it didn't have to come together the way it did. And I think it was the result of determination and considerable effort among Claire and Casey and Justin, as well as all of the partners working to secure funding for the project, that stuck with it and really got us to an exciting time when we were able to conserve their farm for all time. And so I'm going to turn it over now to Supervisor Kirshner. Hopefully you can hear us. Hopefully your microphone is working now. But really excited to have you on with us. It's so great to have the leadership of Loudoun County involved with and supporting the protection of rural landscapes in the county, and making sure that that rural way of life is something that small farmers and small landowners can continue. And we know that conservation is a really viable tool in order to make that happen. So we're excited to have you here. I know you've been the Catoctin District Supervisor for a little bit over a year now. I can see from your bio that, having grown up in Frederick, Maryland on a farm, this is probably an issue that's near and dear to your heart. And so I'll pass it over to you, but we're glad you're with us, and appreciate all you do to support this type of work.
Thank you, Alan. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Living in rural Loudoun, sometimes we have a little issue with broadband, especially when there's a snowstorm going on outside. So when I logged onto the computer, I was having a hard time getting through, but I'm on the phone now. So thank goodness for multiple different aspects of technology. And thanks, Alan, for having me on. And I really appreciate the Northern Virginia Conservation Trust And I'm really excited about this project. As you mentioned, I did grow up. I was a 4-H'er. I come from a pretty long family of agricultural families. My father was a sheep and cattle rancher out of Montana. My mother was a dairy farmer. She grew up in the state of Maine. We moved here when I was a very young lad to the general Northern Virginia, Maryland tri-state area. And I had a small farm, about 90 head of sheep, was I think the highest, few hogs and chickens and that sort of thing. And actually the farm that I grew up on just over the river in Frederick, Maryland is also in a form of a conservation easement and trust, which I keep waiting for it to go on the market to see if I can actually purchase it. I've got some long, I guess, memories that go back, sentimental feelings. But nonetheless, I know the wishes, and I've worked with Justin on the fair board for some time since I've taken over responsibilities as supervisor. I haven't had that. I had to let go of that, but it's really exciting. I know Gary Higgins wrote a letter in support of this easement back, I think, in 2017. So it's been some time coming. And I just want to say, and I don't have a lot of time because I have to jump on another call. I will try to get back and watch hear some of the discussion if I can. But it's important for our local government to support these efforts. Keeping Western Loudoun open as much as possible is really, really important to me. I think the private market, such as what we're seeing happen here in this type of work, is really, really important. I see it working extremely well here in the western part of Loudoun County, and I really appreciate the local efforts of Loudoun County and conserving this farmland, the collaborative efforts of the Loudoun NVCT, NRCS, VLCF, and of course the Abraham and Wish family. It took a lot of work to get this done, a lot of commitment, but it looks like we've reached our goal. And I just want to congratulate everybody for this. I really look forward to coming out there and enjoying seeing some of this. And hopefully this will be continued in the family and farming this area for many, many generations to come. So thank you, everybody, for your hard work on this.
Appreciate that very much, and appreciate your time this morning on a busy morning. So, we'll definitely let you go. And if you're able to hop back in, that's great. But we understand you got a busy day ahead of you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Great. Okay. I'm going to move on now to introduce our conservation director, Matt Gerhardt, who came on board to NVCT in the late fall of 2019 and really inherited this project as, one of our biggest conservation opportunities. And, his efforts, working with the family and working with all the stakeholders, had a lot to do, I think, with getting us to the finish line. And it's no easy task to come from California and, embed yourself into Northern Virginia conservation and sort of learn on the job. But Matt did a great job of that. And so I'm going to hand it over to him to lead us through the rest of the conversation. I should say that for those on the phone, our attendees, if you have any questions as we're going forward, please feel free to put those in the chat. Or you can either private chat Mary or I, or you can, just put it in the general chat, and we'll make sure to get to those as we get to the Q&A. But if it's on your mind and you've got a question, definitely go ahead and put it in there, and we'll make sure we get to it as the conversation continues. So Matt, over to you, and appreciate again everybody being on.
Thanks, Alan. And I just am excited to be here today. Actually, it's great to have a sunny, warm day picture here on a cold day. Excited to get to chat with Claire and Justin and Casey about, what made this happen from their end, and how does a landowner approach a long process like this? That's kind of what we wanted to do with the conversation piece today. Just to give you a little background before we do a little Q&A, a little bit about Hidden Covey Farm itself. What is this place? And we're looking at the farm here. It's about 75 acres, just outside of Lovettsville, and it's a lovely spot with both the regenerating pasture land that the family has been working on. It was in cropland previously, and the process, I hope we hear a little more about the process of how do you bring back pasture land like this in Loudoun. It's also got a wonderful, almost a quarter mile of streams, farm ponds, wetlands, and we're sort of working on getting the riparian corridor back on this property. Another sort of key piece to the project was looking at the historic homestead too. So we've got the barn there. You see that is a Civil War era barn, along with the old farmhouse itself. I understand that the foundations of that even go further back than the Civil War. And so we've worked that into the project as well. And so as I get into the conversation, wanted you all to think through sort of how does a land trust approach a project like this. We try to, in this case, find a way that how can we make agriculture be sustainable for the very long term here, but also protect these key resources and find a way for income to come to the family so that they could reinvest in their business. And that's kind of the theme, is sort of how do you make this a win-win on everyone's side that I'd like to explore. So I'll go ahead and just start to kick it over to Claire, I think, with a question. Sort of what made you want to take action and conserve your farm? And you might need to unmute. I think you guys might be on mute right now.
There you go. So, and just quick introductions. I'm Casey Wish with Longstone Farm, and this is Claire Abraham. So just to identify ourselves, and we wanted to approach this question with kind of the prelude to where we got to before the easement, because there's an important story behind that. And then Claire was going to speak to the decision of how we went forward with the easement. So my husband Justin and I, we own Longstone Farm, which is essentially farming Hidden Covey Farm. And when we first got our parcel of land, which is out here in Landowner County, we knew we were going to farm. And one of the attractive things about the particular parcel that we did end up buying was that there was adjoining open parcels of land, which is important because that in Landowner County in and of itself is special. And so one of the particular parcels that's next to us is now known as Hidden Covey Farm. And as Matt has said, it was a 75-acre piece of land. When Justin and I got into our farming operation and we knew we wanted to expand specifically our beef operation, we looked to, in particular, the Hidden Covey Farm parcel next to us and reached out to the landowner at the time. And that landowner was open to establishing the relationship with us and committed to keeping that parcel of land in agricultural use, which is a really important part of this story. And so that relationship with them moved forward and blossomed. And they eventually were okay with the idea of selling their property to us. When Justin and I were trying to figure out how we could essentially buy, not just lease, this parcel of land, an easement was one of the tools that we looked at. And so that initiated our relationship with NBCT. And so that is how that came to be. It all worked out that Claire was able to buy the farm. And so when we got to the decision-making place of the easement, I think it's important for her to tell her story about why she ultimately decided to move forward with the easement.
So when we purchased the property, or I purchased the property in, I guess it was March 2017, I was living in Fairfax County, and at the time was thinking I would buy this property, let them, use the property. I didn't have any intention of actually moving out here, but once I started coming out and seeing how beautiful it was, I ended up selling my house in Fairfax and building out here. But the easement process that Justin and Casey started made sense to me, in that if I was going to make the financial commitment to buy this piece of property, that it would be protected for the kids and for my grandchildren and their children, so a multi-generational setup, but that the easement funds would give us the opportunity to invest back in the property. The property had been used as cropland. It had corn on it for many, many years. And we were looking at the land, and we knew it was going to need some financial investment And the easement, when we first started talking about it, that seemed like the best option. It would give us the money to work on the land. We've invested in a new roof in the barn. We're getting ready to start in a major project in renovating the barn. We've already put new flooring in it. But the easement gave us that opportunity to take cash out of it without me having to take an equity loan or another loan to do this work, so that we could move this process along and allow Casey and Justin and Longstone Farm to immediately open up the land, get it in condition, and get animals on it, and get it to the state that they have it now. It's a beautiful piece of property, and we're overrun with deer and beautiful flowers and bees and butterflies, and it's all come together using the money that we got back from the easement. Now, it wasn't an easy process, took us a long time, but we got it done.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is I want to be open with people. Like, this is a long process. We started applying for grants for this project almost 4.5 years ago, and I guess, you know, Claire, any reflections? I know you and I had a meeting at one point. You know, are we going to get this done? What do you say to landowners who are thinking about easements, especially when you're talking about the public dollars coming in and the time and the patience you need?
You do have to be patient. You know, our situation was a little bit different, I think, than some of the other easements I've read about, in that we had to think about 10 years from now, where might we need a barn? Or 20 years from now, you know, do we need additional shade structures? Do we need, you know, a barn to move animals or to treat animals? And we had to really think about it. And my son and Casey had to really think about what their needs were going to be down the line, so that we could put that into the easement. And it would, we did a lot of the work up front, which took us a long time. I mean, it was a lot of back and forth, and I'm sure not everybody would have to deal with that. But because of our situation, and Casey and Justin have a very focused vision of what they want. I mean, realistically, you know, I'll be long gone, and they're going to be dealing with this and their kids, and they need to make sure that the easement was properly written from a legal standpoint, so that they can continue to manage the farm and grow it the way that they want to.
It's a great point. Well, actually, maybe it would be great to hear, Justin and Casey, you know, what is your vision, and what is your sustainable operation? How do you run your farm, and what do you want the property to be able to achieve?
Yep, sure. So we are a grass-based livestock operation, and we raise cattle and hogs and chickens. And then we also keep some laying flock chickens and ducks there as well. And we got started with our operation in 2014. Justin and I were looking for land when we were 25 years old. And we put the pieces in place, and we kind of got our farm going, and we've been growing pretty rapidly ever since. We're passionate about our grazing operation on the farm. So we do a lot with not grazing perennial pastures, which we kind of touched on how we've transformed Hidden Covey Farm a bit, but also annual forages. And so we produce pasture-raised pork, beef, chicken and duck eggs. And all those items are sold via an on-site farm store that we have. And then also we wholesale some product to other boutique grocery stores or wineries. And we sell a lot of fresh meat to restaurants as well. And then we do pork shares, beef shares. And we also have a bulk chicken buying offering that we do. And so those are ways that we sell what we produce, but ultimately what we focus on is our innovative farming practices and how we utilize sustainable farming methods and regenerative farming practices to produce the meats that we do. And so we've essentially designed our farm and made a lot of decisions around our land, our farming infrastructure and the lay of our farming operation in order to adhere to those farming methods and then produce the products that we do. And so when we were thinking about the easement and we were trying to think long-term about, you know, what it is that we need to do to make sure that we can grow how we think we want to grow at this point in time. All the things came together for that.
Great. Yeah, and I don't know, Justin, if you have anything to add about kind of your side of the experience.
I'm not sure.
You may be muted. Okay.
What? Hey, I think you can hear me now.
Yes, great.
One of the, I think, just a point, just to everybody. I know there's a lot of prospective easement, people interested in pursuing easements. I think one of the biggest lessons learned we had was to just understand that vision and understand, what the goals of the farm are or the property in general, and understand that the process, one of the reasons the process is long is we tried to utilize every resource available to maximize the funds that we had access to through the process. So in doing so, that increased the amount of stakeholders involved in the project, and due to the volume, and Matt can talk to the specific, I think, we had 5 different reviewers of the easement document.
Yeah.
It's a very iterative process. So I think understanding that vision that you have for the property is important. So when you start getting paper in front of you, you can make sure that there's the language allows for maximum flexibility, but ultimately it becomes a negotiation of language that meets all the stakeholders' intent, and every stakeholder has a little different value, and every stakeholder that's putting money into the process has something different that they want to protect. So I think understanding that it's ultimately a team process to get everybody on the same page, so everybody feels like their goals are being met. That's why it takes so long.
Right. Yeah, I agree completely. It's a very complicated process, but one that really emphasizes the various values and I think builds to something bigger over time. I think we'll have a couple questions that looks like coming in around the easement process, and we'll answer those. But I guess before we move on, I wanted to ask, from a farmer's standpoint in Loudoun these days, especially somebody trying to do something unique and sustainable and local, what is it like for you guys? How do you reach out to urban areas? How is business going? How can we all help in that endeavor?
Yeah, business is going well. We've been growing every year. And as I had kind of mentioned, we knew that we were going to be getting into, we knew we were going to be going into growth mode, and one of those growth opportunities for us was going to be with cattle. And for a grazing cattle operation, you need land, and land's expensive in Loudoun. So there's some aspects there, but essentially we're continuing to grow, and it's been exciting. We're going to be bringing in some agritourism aspects here that will be featuring the historic elements that you had discussed on Hidden Covey Farm, which we look forward to doing more with this coming year. But we pretty much sell all of our products through our on-site farm store. We don't do farmers markets, so we do require everybody to come out to the farm, which is great. It's a very transparent way to sell our products, and it's a very intimate way to come out and buy, where you're coming to buy your food where we're actually producing it and you get to see it, versus a remote farm store location or even a remote farmers market location. But we do reach the DC, Southern Maryland, even West Virginia areas, all through social media for the most part. We have a Facebook and Instagram page, and that's where we post and talk about our farming practices, what's going on at the farm, product announcements, or share stories with the family. We often feature our 3 young kids there on our Instagram stories, which gets a big kick, some laughter there. But that's primarily the way that we do access our customers, is through social media, and then our website, which you have a picture of here up on the slideshow.
Yeah, and we'll do a shameless plug for everyone to go visit your website.
Thank you.
Some great food. And then, of course, we're all looking forward to being out there when we can, after COVID's over and enjoying some events. Well, great. Well, thank you all. And I think we'll have a chance to answer some more questions here in a little bit, but I wanted to kind of also highlight some of the other partnerships that were involved in making this reality. Oh, and here's another slide showing, I think from your website, sort of what you offer, which is exciting. And what I want to do is introduce our funders. So one of the key aspects of this was that we had major funding support from the state of Virginia, as well as the federal government, the NRCS, and we're going to hear from, luckily, both of our funders today. I'll just quickly maybe start with you, Susan, and then we'll go to Diane and Dr. Martinez. But just to kind of give a little overview, we have worked for many years with both DCR, the Department of Conservation and Recreation, and this is actually one of our first ALE federal grants, but we were able to pull together almost $200,000 from both parties. The numbers varied a little bit, but significant funding that made this project happen. And so Sue, I'll just, if you have a few words you'd like to say about VLCF, feel free.
Thank you, Matt. This project was a great project for the Virginia Land Conservation Foundation. We were happy to be a co-funder of this project. Broken out into 5 different categories, with agriculture being one of those 5. And we don't get many applications from Loudoun County. So this one it was great that this one scored so well and got funding. And it's so great to see all the different partnerships that are involved, from the co-funders as well as the landowner and the active ag operation happening on the property, as well as the co-holders of the easement with the county and Northern Virginia Conservation Trust co-holding the easement. There was a lot of coordination on all of your parts, and we're just very happy to see it all come to a very productive and positive outcome. So thank you.
Yeah, no, very, very pleased that we were able to do it. Working with the state was very smooth, I would say, in this case. And I do remember at one point we had, I think, over 60 people involved in different parts of getting the easement transaction done. So it was no small feat.
Great.
Well, so our other partner here, I want to kick it over to Diane Dunaway. She runs the easement program for Virginia's NRCS program. And maybe, Dan, you can say a few words and then pass it over to, we have our state conservationist with us, Dr. Edwin Martinez.
Thank you, Matt. Yes, good morning. Thank you for including us in today's celebration. Closing an easement definitely feels like a time for confetti and champagne. And it's so much goes into it. And then finally you get there. And we were very happy to be able to fund this. It was scored very well. When Northern Virginia Conservation Trust first contacted NRCS a few years ago to discuss Hidden Covey, I remember thinking at the time from the start that it was a unique farm with many special qualities. I explored the website and I thought, I really want to see this place. It has been a privilege and a pleasure working with the Trust professional staff, especially Matt Gerhardt. We shared the common goal of permanent land protection and checked off many details together in an effective working partnership. Accomplishing an easement takes many hands, and I'd like to thank all our Virginia NRCS team, especially easement specialist Letitia Jackson Holder and Assistant State Conservationist for Programs, Patrick Vincent. And I think they're on the call with us today. So a big shout out to them. I love working with an NRCS program that can assist our Virginia land trusts in making easements happen and getting conservation on the ground, as we like to say at NRCS. I would now like to introduce Dr. Edwin Martinez, our Virginia NRCS State Conservationist. Dr. Martinez.
Thank you, Diane, and good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to join you today here. Thank you for inviting us. Thank you for the NRCS team members for coordinating my participation in the event. Certainly, congratulations to the Abraham family for their easement. As everybody has mentioned, closing an easement is a complex process. we as the USDA NRCS, as you may know, here in Virginia, we have 41 field offices and over 150 employees from all different backgrounds, from soil scientists, soil conservationists, biologists, agronomists, and others. And all are working hand in hand with landowners to assist, not only on easements, but also on other farm bill conservation programs. I've been here in Virginia for about 6 months. I'm coming from Washington, D.C. I used to manage the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. I worked from New York all the way to Minnesota doing conservation work. Well, before that, I worked in Michigan, so we did a lot of easement work. As you may know, Michigan, the Great Lakes state, there's a lot of wetlands and there's a lot of different easements and opportunities for conservation. So I have seen the value of the easements all across the nation. I work in California, Nebraska, now in Virginia and other locations. And really would like to highlight more than anything the importance of partnership. We as an agency work with local, state, and other federal agencies, among other groups, to do what we do best, conservation. If you know about the agency, we are the biggest at the national level conservation agency in the states and the nation. So it's really important that the work that we do, we can continue to work with partners. Our partners are who enhance the work that we do on a daily basis. We really appreciate certainly the participation, feedback, and everything that the landowners do when they work hand in hand with us, especially being patient when we're working on easements. We understand they're really complex, but we really appreciate, and I would like to highlight the commitment that many of the landowners here in Virginia have for conservation, conservation in all ways, from water quality all the way to easements, wildlife habitat enhancement, etc. So it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to be here. I will let you with a few questions that Diane will send out later. Just every opportunity that I have had to meet with partners and trying to ask these 3 questions. What are we doing right as an agency? What do we need to do better? And what is our biggest opportunity? You know, those 3 questions, I'm going to just put them out there for you and everybody to think about them. And this is in regards to NRCS. So once again, I really appreciate the opportunity and being able to talk to you all this morning. Stay well, stay safe, and take care. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. And I think those questions hold for all of us in some ways. And actually, perfect segue, because I think we want to go to questions. Just as we're doing that, I think everyone should feel free again to put anything they might want to know into the chat. I know we have a few, Ellen, you've been kind of following that. And just a little plug before we move into that is just, we are a community-based nonprofit. We work off of really working with others. And so getting involved is what we always are we're trying to see people get involved, find new ways to get people involved, and feel free to reach out anytime on that front. Alan, what do you see in terms of for the panelists?
Yeah, some great questions here, and we can direct a few. While Diane and Sue are still, here and having just spoken, I think maybe I'll ask you to touch on the last question here, which is, do the state or federal agencies provide best practices and lessons learned from past recipients of their funding? So maybe you could touch on how people can learn more about this process and how you give people tools to understand what their unique situation might be. And either one of you could come off of mute, or I can take you off of mute.
I can take I'm sorry, Dr. Martinez, go ahead.
Nope, I was going to say you can lead the conversation because you have been working on easements in Virginia longer than what I have, and then I can add to whatever you address.
Okay. I don't have that much to say really, because as a funder, we don't necessarily work with the applicants on the easements. That's the role of the land trust and the locality. There is certain language that VLCF requires be added to each easement or deed in the end. We usually come in sort of at the end of the process because it's just kind of technical language saying that we contributed funding and just to make sure that all the statutory requirements are met. But we're happy to work along the way with the land trust or the landowner. Usually it's their attorney along the way. So I think that addresses the question.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
I would echo what Sue said.
I think you're back on mute, Diane.
Sorry, I thought I'd gone off. I would second what Sue said. We work more directly with the land trusts and holding organizations. That said, I get a couple of calls a month from landowners who want to know everything from what is an easement to, which, where are there land conservation trusts that I can work with. And so I try to steer them to many options. But ultimately, I'm working mainly with the land trust and crossing T's and dotting I's.
Great, that's really helpful. I think for our part in this, this was our first foray in some time into, pulling together a funding partnership like this and working, collaboratively towards the purchase of the easement. So from our perspective, I know Matt, having gone through it, would probably have a lot more best practices and lessons learned having gone through it once than, we did at the beginning. And so from our perspective, we're probably much better capable now of talking to a landowner about the process, about how long it's going to take, about what we're going to need, now that we've been through it once relatively recently. And so there is efficiency that would be created, and I think it would make the process run even more smoothly for Justin and Casey and Claire getting together on practically a weekly basis talking about, and making that process work for people is our business. Without getting into too many details about the easement process, for those that are interested in it, or maybe, landowners yourselves, it is important, I think, to be able to delineate the difference between purchasing an easement and donating an easement, because the process of donating an easement can move much quicker. Because you're not having to pull together funding sources, you're not having to work at a number of different government or agency levels. A landowner interested in donating a conservation easement may be able to do so in a matter of months, 2 to 4 months in some cases. The reason an opportunity like this takes longer is in order to purchase a conservation easement from a landowner, which is a very viable way to conserve property. The value of that easement, is derived, and then we've got to raise the money to pay you as a landowner for that. And so that process takes longer. Both, I believe, are reasonable, and you're seeing the people on the line that are professionals at doing that. But the process of probably purchasing an easement and moving forward to work, to raise the money for that purchase is what often takes a lot of time. Are there legislative changes needed? There are a number of, and this is a very prescient question because we're right in the middle of the state budget process as we speak, where the House and Senate, budget conferees are being named to basically hammer out Virginia's state budget for the year. And in that budget is funding for the Virginia Land Conservation Foundation that Sue talked about earlier, money that any of us as land trusts can access to work on a purchase of a property or a purchase of an easement. And those projects are vetted and scored, by criteria every year. And the more money that's in that pot, the more projects we can protect. And so that is a fund we need to continue to raise and increase as the years go by. There's also funding for agricultural best management practices, programs to protect battlefields, we work on a specific sort of suite of conservation programs that we try to get increased every year in the state budget. But it's a difficult process and often a real fight on our hands to make the case that these programs need funding. And so the more we can be working with, conservation landowners, interested residents who can talk to their state senators, their state legislators, the better we have of creating the champions we need in Richmond to build these programs to where they need to be. There are often many more landowners that want to conserve than there is money at the state and federal budget level to do that. And we need to marry that up better in a way that understands that there's a lot of demand out there to protect property and maybe a real time limited opportunity to do so. And we need to be able to meet that with the resources necessary. Another question here, how are stakeholders found? Who establishes stakeholders? Really, in many respects, if you're a landowner and you're looking for a land trust stakeholder, in our region, there are a number of ways to go about doing that beyond just internet searches, and we're happy to help not only, introduce you to us and our work by coming out and meeting you, but also introducing you to other land trusts as well, if that's a better fit for you. And so as a landowner, stakeholders, finding a land trust stakeholder is probably the first job. After that, we would help establish the rest of the stakeholders, meaning that if we want to purchase a conservation easement, then we would be working to find Diane here and Sue, and making sure that we have the right people in place to help you really meet the dream and the vision that you have for your property. And so we would really help steer you through that with obvious feedback and discussion with you and your individual circumstance about what makes the most sense. So in each of these cases, conservation easements and conservation in general are very unique things. Each land parcel and each landowner is really different. And so we try to walk you through that process. And it's our job to do that smoothly. But because each are so unique, it's really important to get a consultation and walk through what that situation is for you, because then we can really tell you, how much time, how much effort, and what the end result can be in a way that gives you a lot of answers about, what you might be able to do in the future. I don't see any other questions in the chat. Matt, you could certainly jump in and add to any of that if you'd like, but also happy to go back to Casey and Claire if there's more they want to add about their situation.
Yeah, I would just emphasize that we do always need more funding, and I think consistently the funding programs see 5-10 times or more demand than they can actually fund in any given year. So it is usually a situation where we're trying to make the pie bigger, and we're not trying to diminish it for anyone else. I do want to throw it back to, we're going to close up in just a few minutes, but Claire, Casey, Justin, anything else you would want to add about maybe how you might advise another landowner that you know, or another farmer about how they can and should approach a process like this?
I think one thing that might be helpful is to quickly talk about our process that we went through when we first started down this path, because we were connected with a lot of people when we decided we were going to explore an easement as a way to purchase Hidden Covey Farm. And it was essentially a conversation where one person sent us a name that was a contact in this situation, would have been Matt with NBCT, but we did kind of, in a way, interview with 3 or 4 other groups. And as Justin had mentioned, each group has, its own goals and priorities. And specifically for NBCT, for us, they did an excellent job of sitting down and wanting us to be successful with the farming angle. And there are restrictions within other groups that they place on the land in the easement contract that might have been restrictive for some of our future farming opportunities. And so I think from the farming angle, that's one thing that you have to, pay attention to and keep in mind if you're choosing to preserve the land for the farming aspect of that, make sure that you do your due diligence, which again, as we've mentioned many times, was part of the process here that took a little bit longer, but it's very important because down the road, we want to make sure that we can continue to farm and be responsive to what we see changing in the marketplace, and what the different consumer demands are. But when we first started talking with the different easements group, that was definitely one thing that surfaced in those conversations.
Great, thank you. Justin?
Yeah, and I'll echo too what Casey's saying. I think the best way to approach this is just understand that, you know, NBCT is the steward and the keeper and the holder of the easement long term. So that's a partnership you're entering in for perpetuity ultimately. I think you should approach this as a almost like you're shopping for a service, not to belittle the process, but ultimately we went and like Casey said, interviewed and talked with multiple other groups and understood what their values were and what their mission statement was. And I think it's important to find that partnership that marries up with what your mission for your property is long term, because ultimately, and I'll kind of sidestep a question that was just posed from the question and answer thing, is ultimately the easement is going to restrict, it's a document that restricts what can be done on the property. So it's very critical that that language is in there, and ultimately the easement that we entered into that it was placed on the property limits building development. It limits the property being subdivided, and it places a lot of restrictive language on the ground and what can be done on it. And ultimately, if you're through the process not aware of that language, you could be putting yourself in a really surprising circumstance in a few years when you go to want to subdivide the land to build a house, or if you want to try to build an amusement park. There's probably some things in that easement that you're not going to be able to do. So we spent an exorbitant amount of time and effort going through the language and all the different groups, and Matt, bless his heart, was the liaison between us and breaking bad news that we weren't ready to go forward yet. And we had to go back to the wishing well for more language changes, a half dozen times. But it's an important part of the process that I think is probably the biggest misunderstood portion of the easement process in general.
Thank you, Justin. I agree completely. I think it is that customized process of getting to something that the trust and the funders agree to along with the landowner. And it's actually a great question that got put in the chat. What is this protecting? And we kind of glossed over it. I mean, we're protecting the ability for this to be agricultural land forever. And it is a situation, unfortunately, right now, especially in Western Loudoun, where we are losing a lot of prime soil and we're losing a lot of great land for production to housing, to a variety of suburban and rural kind of sprawl-like uses. And it's you see it every day as you go out there. And unfortunately, development doesn't get reversed quickly or usually at all in these situations. So we're really hoping to set people up for success for the future. We're trying to protect that resource for the time when it's really needed, which is we will need local food into the future. Well, I think that we'll go ahead and thank everyone for joining us today. I think we've had a really good conversation. Just a last little bit here. I think we had our contact info in case anyone on the webinar would love to find out more. You're welcome to always contact me or Alan directly about land conservation opportunities. Mary is a great resource for connecting you to other folks that we're part of our ecosystem. And then of course for Longstone Farm and for Hidden Covey Farm, if you can get out and enjoy the food, that would be the best outcome from a session like today. So again, just want to thank all the speakers. Alan, if you have any last words, take it away.
Yeah, no, I appreciate everybody being on. I know it's a tough weather day. I'm lucky my kids didn't burst in here during the call. I did just want to mention that, another piece that is really important to keep in mind are the Loudoun County supervisors themselves. And we had Mr. Kirshner on earlier. He and his colleagues are a huge part of incentivizing conservation in Loudoun County. And we have, and the makeup of the Loudoun County Board has been changing over the last few years. We need more support for this work from them as development really continues to move out 66 and down 95. I mean, we're seeing that area and that dividing line of where, rural Virginia is coming into contact with the sprawl and sort of development from the city. It's getting closer and closer to, to more and more parts of Loudoun. And I think the time is now to really be working to make sure that if you want to keep that rural character, that we're incentivizing people to do it well. The board approved in the last several years an incentive program by which lower income Loudoun County residents could get support from the county to do conservation easements. I think it's important that in the coming years, we think about increasing that income level so that people at different and higher income levels, frankly, can also get support. Because because it does cost time and money, and it's important to make sure that people have opportunities to do this when they want to, and that it isn't a financial reason why they can't. So I would leave it at that, but then just say, this has been a really, really gratifying effort that when we first undertook, really starting in 2017, we didn't know when it would end, and we didn't know, when we would have an opportunity to celebrate in this way. And so this is a great moment for us, but the thanks really go to Casey and Justin and Claire for their commitment and dedication, and you can hear from them how well they can speak about this, and they're a great resource too. I mean, some of our landowners are great resources that we can connect you to if you want to talk to them further. So we do really appreciate everybody being on today. Northern Virginia Conservation Trust is excited to continue doing this work. And we hope that many of you who have attended, who may have more interest in looking into opportunities like this, will do so. And as Matt said, please go to Longstone Farm and meet Claire and Justin and support their business and support what they're doing, because we need more of that as farms throughout Northern Virginia and Virginia overall.